Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 360 to 362. We are just very close to the 1 year anniversary of the war now, 365 days, and it's for the 18th to the 20th of February. And I did not report for the past 2-3 days because I'm sick. As you can hear from my voice, I'm not sick. So yeah, and okay, so anyway, let's not talk too much about myself. Let's start off with the Russian Sukhoi 25 was shot down over Ukraine on the 19th of Feb, reported by the Ukrainian military. And then there is some information coming from this Telegram channel, Bruce Inf. I'm not sure the full name, I forgot about it. So the Ukrainian forces have completed a first batch of 635 servicemen has completed their training course on the Bradley, the M2 Bradley, at this Grafenwöhr in Germany training ground, and then they will start new training of another group of 710 people. And then another group of 890. So these 710, I think, will be training on Bradley and the Paladin self-propelled artillery, and then the 890 troops will be on Striker. And I got a feeling that these 890 troops might not be all armor. They might be armored infantry. That means they will be infantry that will ride within the Striker. But I'm not sure. So I'm just guessing. So you guys can make the math and see, do the math and see, how many vehicles is it there? 600 over people on Bradley. And then the big news in the United States side is that Biden visited Kiev and he met with Zelensky. They walked through an open ground with the air siren blaring, despite there's actually no air threat on Kiev, because Russia is not stupid. So Russia is not going to reach World War III. So yeah, that's kind of a publicity thing. And then on the Southern Front, so at the Southern Front, there is information of reinforcement reported at Kherson, and there is reinforcement of 500 to 1,000 troops of foreign mercenaries. They are Polish and English speaking mercenaries, and based on pro-Russian sources, they say that these guys are going to be acting as recon or raiding forces on the islands. And then another separate information from military chronicles reported that 124th Brigade of the Territorial Defense also arrived in Kherson. So this similarly also being reported to be preparing for the attacking amphibious attack on the shores or the islands. And so very curious, all these reinforcement reports. Moving away from the Kherson front, we over at the Zaporizhia line, we do not have active offensive. For those that are still waiting for the Zaporizhia offensive, it's gone, it's over. It's a epic failure. But the Russians are still shelling Ukrainian positions. Yahidne had been shot on the 20th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. They also shelled Huaypo on the 20th, and also at Pavlivka on the 18th. I know some of you guys would pronounce this as Huaypo. Probably this is the proper way to pronounce it. Yeah, whatever. So that's all from the Zaporizhia line. Moving on to the Donetsk region at the Vuhledar Front. So I'm going to call this entire area as the Vuhledar Front. I will just call it something else later, but tentatively I just call it Vuhledar Front. The Vuhledar Front, the Ukrainian forces have launched a counter-offensive, and they managed to attack all the way to these dachas between Pavlivka and Mykilske. So this counter-offensive, I have detailed it in a separate quick update. You can go and check it out in the DPA War channel. So I'm not going to emphasize, you can talk too much. There is reports of reinforcement as a result of this counter-offensive being sent to Mykilske, according to Surya maps. And so we're probably going to see a Russian counter-offensive on the counter-offensive. So it's like a counter-offensive. Yeah, so to happen soon, I guess, to push back the Ukrainians, because this position anyway, this position here is actually not going to be easy to hold for the Ukrainians as well. They do have some kind of a good advantage because of the high ground, but let's see how it goes. Otherwise, the Russian Defense Ministry have been reporting shelling at Vuhledar basically every day, 18, 19, 20, 21st. All their reports daily, they have been reporting shelling using artillery and flamethrowers on Vuhledar. So the life in this city must be hellish. And moving on, I just saw a soccer field. When they're bored, they can actually play football here. Not bad. Moving on, at Prashestivka and Zolota Niva, both has been on the recipient of artillery shelling also. On the 21st, is today's report. Most likely is talking about yesterday. Zolota Niva has been hit. Prashestivka was hit on the 18th, and then it was hit on the 21st. Bohoyevlenka, which is in another name, in their former name is called Dobrovolye, has been also shelled on the 20th. And then we have fighting reported at Novoselivske on the 16th. No, 16 is actually outdated. On the 17th, no, it's outdated. Yeah. So there's no fighting at Novoselivske. Moving on to Marinka. At Marinka, there is fighting reported on the 19th and on the 20th. Both is reported by Deep State UA. And then there is fighting reported in the north of Marinka. Wargonzo reported that the fighting comes from two different directions. So let me bring out the arrows. So the Russians continue to be pushing in these directions and also from the north. So this is what is happening. So yeah, in case you guys are not sure what is actually happening. So let's move on from Marinka. We have fighting reported at Krasnohorivka on the 19th, reported by Deep State UA. Otherwise, it's been quiet, so not very sure if this is actually a proper offensive. Moving on to the Avdiivka Front. So this is the Avdiivka region in the northern part and northwestern part of Donetsk City. There's fighting reported at Novoselivske, according to Deep State UA and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. There is fighting reported at Vodian on the 20th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And over in the north of Avdiivka, in this region called Vesely, the Ukrainians actually launched a counteroffensive, according to Wargonzo. However, the Ukrainians have only partial success, with the Ukrainians attacking from this direction towards the highway, which is currently still controlled by the Russian forces, which actually reminds me that this might actually be raid. So this is actually probably raid, or I just deleted it. Never mind, it's raid. So this is Kayamka. Yeah, Kayamka is still a gray zone. I'm not sure exactly who is actually holding Kayamka. Probably I should go head over to Deep State UA and see what they say. Over at north of Vesely, there is fighting reported at Novoselivske on the 20th of February, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. That's all from the Avdiivka front. It's still pretty bogged down. The Ukrainians are still doing a very good job holding back the Russians. This small little town on Novoselivske took forever for the Russians to attack. Vodian-wise, they can't even break through this fortification. And then they have been attacking Vesely and Krasnohorivka to no avail. They barely able to manage to capture Novoselivske. So yeah, it does look really bad, when compared to what the Wagner private military contractors can do. The Russian military looks highly inadequate, in comparison. Moving on to the New York front. At the New York front, we have only fighting reported at Druzhba, according to the Deep State UA in their report on yesterday. And over now, we are into the Bakhmut front. So Bakhmut is here. At the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported towards Dilyevka, according to Deep State UA, as well as at Bilohorivka. These two both happened over the past 24 hours. And moving towards Bakhmut City, on the western part of Bakhmut City, there is fighting reported near Chasivya on the 18th. I'm not sure why the Ukrainian Defense Ministry reports on the 17th and on the 18th that that there is fighting near Chasiv, but because by that time the Ukrainian forces have counterattacked and pushed back the Russians to a further line, and this has been corroborated with a geolocation of some fighting. There's a Ukrainian tank shooting at Russian defensive positions. The Russian forces were actually hiding in this tree, and then there was a Ukrainian tank that's moved in, and then they just fired a few shells into these tree lines. According to the drone footage, it's not clear. We can't really see the soldiers, but assumingly that they confirm have some terrible time. So that also shows that this is actually pretty close to where the front line is. So we shall see how the thing develop over in this region here. The Russian forces also got pushed back. Previously, they were already very close to Hryanykivka, and then they got actually pushed back. So now the front line is actually around here, with the Russians still trying to push. Exactly where they're pushing is now unclear, because the reports now only coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The pro-Russian sources did not really spell much. Probably they are doing quite horribly, so they don't really want to report much about Hryanykivka. So the Ukrainians did a very good job with all the reinforcement coming from Chasiv. They actually do the counteroffensive, reinforced Hryanykivka, push back the Russians, and retook the highway. So in some sense, this highway is kind of reopened, but it's definitely still under some limited kind of fire control by the Russians. They are still holding along this line here. So the Russians still can definitely shell at all these positions, but to say accurate attacks on moving vehicles, maybe not so easily. There is a geolocation of Russian forces at this position here, which actually confirms that the front line is actually further back. So at least the Ukrainian front line is actually here, at least. So fighting is being reported at Bakhmut on all 3 days, 18, 19, 20, all by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. In terms of more details, we have the SITREP maps reporting fighting in the southwest on the 18th, and then Ryba reported it on the 20th. And on the southern part, north of Opitne, we have fighting on the 18th, also by the SITREP maps, and then it was repeated on the 20th by Ryba. I think the reason why 19 there was nothing because Ryba was resting. I think it was a Sunday. Is it? Today is 21st. Yeah, I think it's a Sunday, right? So fighting is reported on the eastern side of Bakhmut on the 19th and on the 20th. Both it was reported by SITREP maps and then by Ryba. And then there was information by War Gonzo that there is some counter battles, and I did translate this translation before. This is actually a counteroffensive. So there is certain Ukrainian counteroffensive happening while the Russians are mainly doing the pushing in this region here. So moving on, we have a geolocation by Deep State UA of Russian forces in this position here. So it's not something surprising, because we do have geolocation of Russian forces in this position, but it does shows that with no newer geolocation of Russian forces maybe here or here, it shows that the front line is currently stuck in this position here. Moving on to the north of Bakhmut. So now this Bakhmut city, in case you guys have missed this information, that Prigozhin, the Wagner's boss, Wagner Private Military Contractor's boss, has estimated Ukrainian strength at the Bakhmut front to be around 40 to 50,000. In case you guys missed this. And in the northern part of Bakhmut city, fighting is reported in the north of Bakhmut according to SITREP maps. And then what happened was that the Russian forces from there broke through the Ukrainian lines, and they actually broke through to the north and the western or northwest of Yahidne. And the Russians also captured the railway line, and they are currently making the push south. And with this push, this also shows that Berkhivka, that's currently have been fighting for the past 3 days, 18, 19, 20, all reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, with the Russians capturing most of the north of Berkhivka according to Ryba, where the Russians are pushing in this direction. And with this push south, and you can see that the front line is here. You can see that it is some kind of encirclement that is currently being that's currently developing. So it's already semi-encircled. So with the Russians able to continue to push for Dubovo Vasilivka, which they are being reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on both days, on the 18th and 19th, and Ryba on the 20th, we can actually expect that the Russians may actually go through this line and try to encircle, or they can actually break in this way. So some serious concern again for the Ukrainians. This breakthrough is kind of unexpected. I did not expect this breakthrough. And the Russian forces may try to capture Yahidne, or they might not. They might leave only some forces, and then they continue to push this direction towards this important highway that went through Koromove. And the objective will be to cut away this road from usage. So let's see whether this will happen. I'm just saying that this is a possibility. I'm not saying that the Russians definitely will do this, but it is a very plausible thing, because if the Russians can capture this region here, leaving the Ukrainian forces in this encirclement, and should the Russians also able to capture Hryanykivka and the road, you can see that the Ukrainians will have very limited space to redraw, and this encirclement will be disastrous. But tentatively, not yet. The Ukrainians are still holding very strongly in the south. It's in the north that they are having problem, and this is actually also mentioned by Deep State UA, pro-Ukrainian sources, saying that the north must hold for the survival of Bakhmut City. Moving on, there is the Russian Defense Ministry announcement of the capture of Bilohorivka. This comes quite a number of days late. We already reported this on the 17th, and it took 3 days for the Russian Defense Ministry to actually corroborate this information that Bilohorivka is now fully captured by the Russian forces. And so this, as I want to also highlight, they do not call Wagner by name. They call them volunteers from assault detachment. This is actually the code name for Wagner. And then they also make sure to drop in with cooperation with airborne troops units, and supported by firepower of the missile troops and artillery of another group of forces under the Russian military. So they want to emphasize that this fight is not just by Wagner alone, but it's Wagner doing the ground offensive supported by Russian military with some support from the airborne troops, which I'm not sure what exactly they do. Moving on to the north, around the Vuhledar region, we have fighting reported at Berkhivka on the 19th and on the 20th. Fedorivka saw fighting on the 18th. Rozdolivka saw fighting on the 20th. And this is interesting because previously we have seen the Russian forces pushing all the way to the river. So that there's this river here, right? There's this river here moving to the Zelenianske, and the Russian forces push all the way, and then they actually form the front line along the river. And in fact, it seems exactly that's what their objective is, and they did not push through. This attack did not happen, so that's very interesting to me. Moving away from Rozdolivka into the Siversk Front proper, we have fighting reported towards Vasile from Bilohorivka direction, with the Russians pushing from this direction, moving towards Vasile. Reported by War Gonzo. There is geolocation of Russian forces at this position, at this tree line here. They apparently got shelled by the Edelweiss forces of the Ukrainian side. So this also helped us to redraw the front line away from this geolocated positions, so that we know that the Russian front line, at least this is like this. We also have information based on Deep State UA's mapping that they map Berestove as under Russian control. This actually contradicts what the Ukrainian Defense Ministry talked about on the 15th of October, where they still claim that they were defending in the area of Berestove. That was after we already reported that the Russian forces have captured this town of Berestove. So with a pro-Ukrainian source corroborating, we can actually move the front line at least according to Deep State UA, is around like this. So we'll follow that. Fighting is reported towards Vremka on the 18th of Feb. We do not know this report actually referring to exactly where. So we are not sure. Just take this entire spike here, just take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah, it's not. I'm not exactly sure though. Though this horn of a unicorn is actually referring to where. Maybe the horn is only this short. Only this short. Yeah, I don't know. So moving on, we have fighting reported at Spurny. I don't think this is going to be a very big offensive. This reported by Deep State UA. So still have not managed to break through the Ukrainian lines, and at Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region, still in the Siversk Front, there is fighting reported on all 3 days, 18, 19, and the 20th. The Russian forces continue to try to attack Bilohorivka, and interestingly, there's a geolocation of Ukrainian forces getting artillery shelled by the Russian forces at this position, and which actually shows that the Ukrainian forces is actually at least in this position. So if we are to be a bit liberal about where they are, the Ukrainians do have this doggy here that is looking very fiercely at Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk. They're looking at Severodonetsk, I want to eat you. So this is happening now. Moving on to the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, we have fighting in the Semiensk forestry near Kreminna on all 3 days, 18, 19, and 20. All are reported by the Deep State UA. The Russian Defense Ministry simply reported shelling in the Semiensk forestry on the 19th, and the Gonzo reported that the Ukrainians counterattack in the Semiensk forestry near Pavlivka. Pavlivka is actually here, and the Ukrainian forces is actually attacking in this direction. The Russians are attacking more towards the further up in the north, nearer to Kreminna, and there is reinforcement of Ukrainian forces reported southeast of Dibrova. So Dibrova is actually here, so there is reinforcement coming to this region southeast of Dibrova, probably to continue to hold the line against the Russian onslaught coming from Kreminna direction. And in the Dibrova region, the Ukrainians hold a very strong line. We're not sure exactly where the line is now, but the Russian forces, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, have been reported on all 4 days, including in their 12 noon report today, that the Russian forces have been shelling Ukrainian positions all around Dibrova since like every day. Like they just shell the Ukrainian forces every day. Their reports is like almost the same. Not exactly sure what is happening, but the Ukrainian lines are holding back the Russian forces. Reinforcement is also reported at Toske, according to the pro-Russian source Ryba, where the 1st Battalion of 67 Mechanized Brigade will move to Toske. So they are operational reserve from the forces at Liman. Talking about Liman, there's a Sukhoi 27 of the Ukrainian Air Force shot down over Liman, or Krasny Liman, or what we like to call it, the crispy lemon, over near Izium. It's not Liman. I put this in the wrong place. Sorry, it's on Izium. So it's Izium. My bad. So it's Izium. So the Sukhoi 27 actually shot down over the Cherry. So shot down over Izium. So that was a map in the wrong place. Do I miss anything? No. So moving on, further up north in the Kreminna Front, we have fighting reported at Terny, with the Russian forces shelled Terny on the 19th. The attack come on the 20th. So sounds like it's like a shelling and then attack thing. And Yampolivka also received shelling on the 20th and the 21st of February. There is fighting reported at Chervenopopivka on the 18th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, with shelling reported at 18, 19, and 20, all reported by the Russian Defense Ministry as usual. Near Ploshchanka, the Deep State UA reported that the Russians are attacking from Ploshchanka on the 18, 19, and 20. We do not exactly know what this is supposed to mean. Is it fighting here or here or here? Not sure. So anyway, there is fighting reported at Mykilske or towards Mykilske, according to Wagner on the 20th of Feb, and that's all from the Kreminna Front. So moving up to the Svatove region, this is Svatove, and in the Svatove region, there is shelling reported at Semi-Encirclement on the 18, 19, and 20, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. And there is heavy fighting reported at Novoselivske. Russian Defense Ministry reported the fighting on the 18, 19, 20, and 21, all by the Russian Defense Ministry, which means the Russians are actually attacking very fiercely in this position. They are trying to overrun the Ukrainian lines here, which the Ukrainians are doing really well at holding. So moving up north, we have fighting reported at Kreminna on the 18, 19, and 20, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. We have fighting reported near Pavlivka on the 21st, which is actually reported today, might be referring to fighting yesterday. And that's all from the Svatove region. And moving on to the Kupyansk Front. So Kupyansk is actually this city here on the Oskil River. This is Oskil River, held by the Ukrainian forces. There's fighting reported at Hryanykivka, being reported today by the Russian Defense Ministry, and it wasn't reported fighting over the past 3 days. The fighting on the past 3 days actually only goes around Hryanykivka and Mykilske. So the Russian forces, after the capture of Hryanykivka, continue to push outwards, and fighting continued to be reported all around this region here, with the Ukrainians holding their lines, and the Russians also attacking Mykilske. So which is why we see all the fighting reported over this region, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and both Defense Ministries reporting the fighting around this region here. The Russian Defense Ministry have acknowledged the capture of Hryanykivka on the 18th, with them corroborating our information from the 16th. So 16 and then 18, then they announced the capture. So just to share about corroboration of information and intel, all information and intel should be corroborated within 3 days. So either by the opposing source or by an official source. Official source referring to the Defense Ministry of either Russia or Ukraine. So, which is why this is also how I keep track of accuracy of intel. If the information do not corroborate, I will flag it out and say that something is wrong with this. And which is why very interesting why how Surya Maps is one of our primary sources, because their information always corroborates. It's very cool, and their information tends to be earlier than Ryba. So when the information come out first, Ryba's information then come out, and when Ryba's information come out, it actually corroborates with Surya's Maps. Thus, the information is corroborated. Because Ryba is among the most trusted sources along with Deep State UA. So, and then there is fighting reported at near Vyazhne on the 19th of Feb. So, which is kind of weird, because in this region here, the assumption is that the Russians have captured all along the river area. So to fight around this region here, or this region here, is kind of weird. So this is one-off information from the Russian Defense Ministry. We're not too sure exactly where they're talking about. But also by the look of it, it doesn't seem like the Russians are intending to do a river crossing and punch through into Kharkiv region on the western part of the Oskil River. This is the Oskil River. So as you can see, Oskil River. So the Russians seems to be very happy with river crossings. Rivers. They're gonna stick to the river, and then they're gonna push down towards Kupyansk. Oops, wrong color. Still wrong color. Towards Kupyansk. So anyway, that's all from the Kupyansk Front, and I believe that is all. So this is the summary for the day of 360 to 362 for the 18th to 20th of February. Sorry for my voice. I'm still not fully recovered yet. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you. Do share this with your friends, family, and whoever who might be interested in the war, and support. This is the best way to support DPA, as well as, of course, liking and watching. And I'll see you in the next update.